Game 6 of the Stanley Cup final, and the Oilers have their backs against the wall in Sunrise. The Cats with a 3-2 series lead as the series shifts back to Sunrise tonight. The Panthers looking to take advantage of that home ice, keep Lord Stanley in Florida for a second straight year, looking for back-to-back Cup champs. That sounds nice, doesn't it? Puck drop scheduled for 8 p.m. Eastern in South Florida is going to be a late night for all of us. It's going to be a late night for you as well. Pierre McGuire joining us now here on HQ. Now, Lord Stanley will be in the building, Amerant Arena in Sunrise, Florida. A lot of our folks here at CBS Sports HQ go into that game supporting the Florida Panthers. It has been a fun series to watch, an incredible series to watch, really. But the Panthers right now with the opportunity to win back-to-back cups. What's the key to them closing this out tonight?
Maintain your composure, be disciplined, be well coached, but more than anything else, communicate. Don't let the moment overwhelm you. I've been part of this where we've won back-to-back in 91 and 92. The second time around, you should always be better because you have that composure, you have that understanding, and you know what to do with it. And I think Florida is in that spot right now, Jenny. I really do.
There are some pictures on social media, and I don't know the accuracy of them building a stage out by the beach. What's your take on that?
That'd be one of those where I say, we don't know anything about that. We're not doing that at all. You don't want to pay attention to that, but you know, it's interesting. Winning one Stanley Cup, as you know, it's really difficult to do. To do it back-to-back is amazing. But to go to 3 straight Stanley Cup final, which the Florida Panthers have done, is pretty amazing.
An incredible organization over there. You look at the other side and the Oilers. Goaltending has really been a huge storyline from start to finish with this team. They just announced that they are going back to Stuart Skinner for Game 6 tonight against the Panthers. Right move, right? Oh my gosh, 100%. First of all, Stuart Skinner's an Edmonton guy, drafted by the Edmonton Oilers in the 3rd round. Kid that grew up right down the street from where the rink is. But Jenny, the biggest thing, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, that starts that team, they're on his team. They want him in the net. So that's the only way the coach could have gone. This is not a knock on Calvin Pickard, by the way, who's had a really good, strong pro career, but you would never think of him as a Stanley Cup winning starting goalie. Stuart Skinner, more of that pedigree. Here's the one stat that's pretty amazing, though. In 1988, the Edmonton Oilers won the Stanley Cup. Grant Fuhr was their goalie. Save percentage was below 900. Stuart Skinner save percentage right now below 900. Very difficult to win the Stanley Cup with the save percentage below 900. That is a good fun fact right there. And we look at some of the players that are out there, and we have some legends on the ice, one of them being Connor McDavid. Yep. He was asked about being one of the best and just having that pressure to win the Cup and find success. Here's what he had to say about it.
Connor, you're the greatest player in the world. How much extra pressure is there for you to win this game and drag it back to Edmonton and win a Stanley Cup?
That's a pretty heavy question. I don't think about it that way. You know, if you think about it that way, you'd be probably pretty crippled in terms of and how you prepare and how you play. So it's a big game. Everybody knows that. I know that. And I'm looking forward to it. It's fun hockey. It's been a fun series to be a part of.
I don't think you could coach a better answer than that, right?
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you think about it, I'm no disrespect meant to the person asking the question. That's a loaded question.
It's a lot to handle.
That is a lot. I just, the way he handled that, Connor McDavid, that was brilliant. I thought that was outstandingly well done.
What do you expect from McDavid tonight? A
good game, but not a great game, and here's why. The matchups. Florida gets last change, Jenny, so that's going to be a problem for Connor McDavid. They're going to play Aaron Ekblad a lot, Gustav Forsling a lot against him, Sasha Barkov a lot, so it's going to be 3 to 5 players solely responsible to try to shut down Connor McDavid. That's a tough task for anybody to have to go through. I do believe they'll split up Draisaitl and McDavid, which they did when they played in Game 4 here in South Florida. Last matchup, last change hurts Edmonton a lot going into this game.
When you do have a talent like him, though, and you look at the way that they clawed their way out of the 3-0 series deficit last year, to have that type of experience with this type of squad, how much does that help going into a do-or-die scenario tonight?
Jenny, I like how you presented that because I do think it matters. It matters a lot because if you don't have any place to refer back to, chances are you're not going to be very successful. So they have that reference point of going back to last year. It'll matter, but you still have to perform on the ice. And I think last change is going to matter. I think the fact that Florida knows how to close people out, that's going to matter. Paul Maurice is veteran savvy as a coach. That matters a lot. And Bobrovsky versus Skinner, I'm taking Bobrovsky.
All right. I think you just answered my question, but who wins tonight?
Well, I think the Florida Panthers will win. I thought the
Closing it
Florida
out.
Panthers would win the series in 5.
Okay.
And it got extended.
One game off.
It got extended in Game 4, and part of why it got extended is because of the willingness of the Edmonton Oilers to go to another level. But when you look at the firepower for the Florida Panthers with Brad Marchand, with Sam Bennett, with Sammy Reinhart, you look at the defensive depth, you look at the 4-line depth up front for the Florida Panthers, I just think it's too big an ask for the Edmonton Oilers to come from behind in this series and try to win it again. So I think Florida wins tonight.
You just mentioned some of the guys, and man, it's going to be a celebration if Florida wins tonight. But before we let you go, I want to ask about two of the players that you just mentioned, and that's for the Conn Smythe. So Sam Bennett is the favorite to win the award. 15 goals in the playoffs, 13 of those coming on the road. And then you have Brad Marchand there, 6 goals in the Cup, 2 of those coming in Game 5 alone. Which one has the edge here? I mean, just incredibly talented players all around, but who do you like?
At the beginning of the playoffs, I thought Sergei Bobrovsky would win. So I think he's still in the hunt, but I don't think he'll win if they win tonight. I still think it's going to be Sam Bennett based on what he's done. It's not just about the offense. It's about the way he plays. He infuriates the opposition. He beats people up. He's a whole lot of nasty to play against, as you know, Jenny. And I think the biggest thing about him, he knows what it takes to win.
It's
and
everything.
he's prepared to do whatever he has to do to win.
It's everything we love about hockey, just in one person, all wrapped up. Pierre, McGuire, thanks for joining us. It's going to be a
Jenny,
fun night, getting us pumped for Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. It is in Sunrise, and if this thing goes to 7, which Pierre is saying it's not going to happen, but you never know, it very well could, the guys embark on that long trek to Edmonton for Game 7. That would be Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, feeling good coming into tonight. Definitely know that I have the confidence in my teammates and coaching staff, and yeah, I think there's obviously a lot of belief still.
All right, that is Stu Skinner speaking to the media after he gets the nod. He is going to be in net in this must-win situation for Edmonton. Game 6 on deck from Sunrise. Pete Blackburn here, joining us for the conversation here for the Cup final game. He gets pulled in Game 4, right, Pete? We talked about it so many times. Calvin Pickard gets the nod. He lets up 4 goals in Game 5. So now the Oilers are turning back to Stu Skinner there between the pipes. What do you think? Does he give them the best chance to win? Is this the right move for Edmonton?
I think it's the right move based off of what you saw in Game 5. Like, I think you had to turn to Calvin Pickard given the way that he played in Game 4 and the fact that you won and turned things around with him in net. But he was bad in Game 5, and he was one of many Oilers players that was bad. So I think you turn back to Stu Skinner, who has a higher ceiling than Calvin Pickard, but both of them are kind of stick your hand in the bag, see what you get. It could be awful. It could be pretty good. Either way, I just feel like goaltending has not been that big of a story for the Oilers in this series, in the sense that it's not the biggest reason why they've lost these games. Where it's a big story is that you're not really getting the stability that Florida has with Sergei Bobrovsky in net. Sergei Bobrovsky has played every second in net for Florida during this Cup run, and it's just part of the bigger story with the Panthers is that they don't have a lot of inflection when it comes to their lines and the way that they look game to game, their goaltending. They're just the most stable team that we've seen in the playoffs, whereas the Oilers, they have a lot of change game to game and a lot of instability in terms of their lines are always in flux. You never know who's going to get the start in net. And I think that maybe be catching up to them here in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, and to your point about Bob, if you look at the save percentage and some of the goals that he has led up on paper, it might not be as indicative of the crazy saves that he's made, is certainly in a lot of overtime situations as well. So we know Game 6 is tonight. If necessary, Game 7 shifts to Edmonton on Friday. Do you think it ends tonight in Game 6, or is this thing going to 7, Pete? Where is the end?
Listen, I won't be surprised if the Oilers win here in Game 6 because they're going to be super desperate, and I think that goes a long way. They should have been desperate before this, and it didn't go a long way. But now their backs are officially against the wall, and they also say, you see it time and time again. The fourth win in a series, especially the Stanley Cup final, is the hardest one to get because the Florida Panthers, despite the fact that they've been there before and they're the reigning Stanley Cup champions, like having the cup in the building and knowing you're 60 minutes away from being a Stanley Cup champion again, I do think that weighs on you and puts extra pressure on you. And not that I don't believe they're able to handle it, but it will have an effect. And can they work through it? We'll see. But I'm not going to be surprised if the Oilers win. But that being said, Game 5 was the first point in this series where I had the thought, oh man, one of these teams is just better than the other. And the Panthers, I think, have clearly proven that they are better than the Oilers. I expect them to win the Cup final. I just don't know if it's going to be in Game 6 or Game 7.
All right, so you expect them to win the Cup final, the Panthers, that is. And there's, only so many topics of conversation that we can have regarding both of these teams while we're waiting for playoff hockey to come back. And if we make the comparison to some NFL teams that came up just short in the history of the game, right? We think of the Buffalo Bills back in, the 90s. They go to 4 straight Super Bowls. They never win one. So if the Oilers, with all the talent that they have, and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, if they get to back-to-back Cup finals and they lose, is it dramatic to maybe draw those comparisons?
Dramatic, maybe, but it is funny you bring up that question because I don't know if you remember, but last year in the Cup final, when Chris Knobloch, head coach of the Edmonton Oilers, was asked about being the more inexperienced team in the championship round playing the Panthers, he said, well, think about the Buffalo Bills. How good did that experience do them when they lost 4 Super Bowls in a row? And now we're having the discussion, are the Edmonton Oilers the Buffalo Bills because they're on the precipice of losing 2 in a row? At the end of the day, even if they lose this one, they're still only halfway home to what the Buffalo Bills accomplished. But there is, connections to be drawn because the Bills did come up against, a potential dynasty team in Dallas in a couple of those years. And I do think we're probably very close to having that discussion about the Florida Panthers if they win a second straight Stanley Cup and have made the Stanley Cup final 3 years in a row. So maybe draw your own conclusion, but it is kind of funny that we're having the conversation.
Yeah, careful what you say about the Buffalo Bills, Chris Knobloch, because it might come back around and bite you. All right, we got to talk.
Ultimate karma.
Yeah, literally. Let's go to the Oilers and what they have to do to get a win, because they've been down 3-0 in the Cup final before and have forced a Game 7. We've seen some crazier things happen. So I want you to list off your keys to a win here for Edmonton. But how much does it depend on Connor McDavid? Because we finally kind of saw him break through a little bit in Game 5. But how much does it depend on him and his performance in order for them to win here?
All right, I'm going to park the bus on the Connor McDavid question because he is one of my 3 keys here. But I do want to start. First and foremost, start is the important word because the Oilers need to have a good start in this game. When you look at how this series has gone, they've been chasing way too many of the games, and I think it's not been more apparent than the last 3 games because they've been outscored 7-0 in the first period of the last 3 games. And then when you look at the bigger picture, they've spent 200 minutes and 25 seconds trailing in this series and have led for 33 minutes. So they've just spent too much of the series chasing the game and letting the Panthers dictate. Number 2, we talk about the goaltending. You need stability in net. And whether it's Stu Skinner or Calvin Pickard, it doesn't matter. They just need that stable goaltender behind them. The faith that your goaltender is going to be able to make a big stop when you need him to, especially in these peak inflection moments. The Oilers haven't gotten enough of those saves. They need to start Stuart Skinner for all the things that we criticize him for. What has been true with Stuart Skinner in years past is that he gets stronger as series goes along. That being said, it usually starts in Game 4, and Game 4 was a real blow-up point for Stu Skinner in this series, so maybe we throw that away. And if we're throwing that away, it does come down to Connor McDavid, because if the Oilers lose this Cup final, the 2 easiest and perhaps laziest takeaways that fans will have is that the Oilers' goaltending wasn't good enough and that Connor McDavid wasn't big enough in the Cup final. And that latter point may or may not be true depending on the lens you want to take. Connor McDavid's only scored 1 goal in this Cup final, and it was essentially more or less a garbage time goal. He's going to need to come up in big moments, especially in games where the Oilers have their backs against the wall. Starting tonight, if Connor McDavid has a statement game, it's a big reason why the Oilers make Game 7.
Yeah, you know it's not a good game for the Oilers when Connor McDavid finally gets his first goal of the series, and no one's really talking about it in terms of the game itself. Pete, we certainly appreciate it. Game 6, that is tonight from Sunrise, getting a look at the odds to win the Conn Smythe. Connor McDavid won it last year. This season, Benny and Brad have the top 2 odds. Benny, the heavy favorite at -160.